Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists. Founder, Fundación Carlos Slim Elu. Minister of Foreign Affairs, People's Republic of China, Yang Jiechi. Managing Director and CEO, Equity Bank Limited, James N. Mwangi. Lieutenant Governor, the State of California, Gavin Newsom. Commissioner, New York City Department of Transportation, Jeanette Sadiq Khan. President, the Ford Foundation, Luis A. Ubiñas. And our moderator, anchor CNBC, Maria Bartiromo.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this session. We've been talking about jobs all day, and tonight we're going to look at megacities and what can be done on the city level to create jobs, as so many people are moving toward urban areas every day throughout the world. We know this is not a local story, but a global story. Minister Yang, can you kick us off and tell us what changes you have seen and how the urbanization process in China is playing out?
I'm very glad to be here. I think mega cities, mega challenges is a very important subject. Talking about China, because of the reform and opening up policy in the last 30-some years, China has gone through great changes. One of them is the expansion of the cities. Now we have about 120 cities. Each has a population of over 1 million. So the urban population increased from about 18% of the total population to 50%, numbering 666 million people. Our projection is that in the next 20 years or so, the urban population will be about 900 million people. So what we try to do is that we try to improve the quality of life of the people in the cities, because we think that the development of the cities is vital to the social and economic development of a country. And first, this is one of the most important avenues to achieve modernization. People are better equipped in cities. Second, this is the way to generate more consumption, to pull up the economy. Third, it will leave the people in the countryside with more natural resources to work on, because others will leave for the cities. And fourthly, it will be good for regional balancing, to make sure that we can close the gaps in various ways. But we are also confronted with many challenges. Why don't I just stop here? Thank you.
We will get into the challenges, and of course, when you look at cities as big as 20 million people, like you're seeing in Beijing or Shanghai, the challenges are very different than something a lot smaller. James, let's talk a bit about what you have seen in Nairobi, because this is one area that certainly is representative of not only the challenges where you've got very different income levels and very different mentalities in terms of poverty and up from poverty, living together, living in the same area. So what challenges and opportunities have you seen, and what have you done in terms of financing, infrastructure, and changes in the city?
Thank you very much. In Kenya and basically sub-Saharan Africa, we are seeing a much faster migration of people from rural areas because of the low value addition in sub-Saharan Africa agricultural sector to the urban areas that gives hope. The challenges, of course, the biggest one is infrastructure to accommodate these huge numbers. These are young cities, but whose population is growing faster than the city capacity to provide infrastructure. But basically, with all that comes huge opportunities, because basically, particularly for the private sector, this is aggregating huge populations, huge markets together, young people, highly talented. And so they provide a huge pool of fairly well-educated young people because of the selection mechanism of urbanization. And that really has been a huge opportunity for Equity Bank. Turning around, Equity Bank sees this as also as a huge market which can be banked. And the aggregation, particularly in the various residential areas, provides us easy access to huge numbers that meet the economies of scale, and consequently, we can provide low-cost financial services. And what we have seen as the greatest opportunity and solution to the urban challenges is financing emerging entrepreneurs from young people who creates enormous employment for those that they have come up in the urban centers with. And that financing is what is creating right industries in the informal sector, which is really big in Kenya. Is supported by that type of financing. And lastly, what we are seeing is the opportunity to finance the transport system. And that is one of the biggest aspects. Again, that is based on asset financing. So again, it's the same people who have migrated that you finance a bus or two to provide easy transport for that large population that is coming to the city.
Yeah, the infrastructure is so important here. That's really one of the biggest parts of the story. And Carlos, I want to get to you in a moment because it's not just infrastructure that you have seen and overseen developing throughout Latin America, but technology has really been instrumental. But let me stay on financing for a moment on top of James's comment there. Luis, what can your foundation, other foundations do? How tough is it in terms of raising the appropriate money required to actually accommodate the people that we're talking about moving into these cities?
In the end, no amount of outside capital is going to solve this problem. What is central is empowering the people in the communities themselves, putting in place public and private sector forces that allow the local capital creation and capital deployment that drives billions and billions of dollars as opposed to the millions we can deploy. So what we do is catalyze. What we do is encourage people to organize. What we do is encourage governments to regularize. Because once you regularize, once you give people title, once you give them identity cards, once you give them local citizenship, a huge issue in many places, then they begin to invest on their own. They begin to create opportunity. So the question for us is how can we catalyze local development, unleash the entrepreneurial energy and creativity that comes from density? Not how can we pay for development, but how can we get people to help themselves?
You need to empower people.
You have to not just empower them, but you have to give them voice and power that is linked to what the government is doing. Because government policy can catalyze, can actually put in place the infrastructure requirements, can put in place the regularization of ownership, the regularization of businesses, the regularization of citizenship in those places that unleash their entrepreneurial energy.
Carlos, we were just talking back in the green room about some of the ways to do that, unleash the empower people. And one way that you mentioned was private partnerships, the private sector buying various things, whether it's roads, bridges, things like that. Talk to us a bit about that and how important that could be in terms of creating jobs in some of these megacities.
Thank you, Maria. Good afternoon. Well, big cities is the consequence of modernity. Since the 20th century with the Industrial Revolution, cities were created. Now the technology takes us to the service society. We are a knowledge society. We are having mega cities. And well, between these mega cities, we have sometimes many cities together that get already absorbed by the growth of the big city. And what makes a big city possible is that the population has all public services. When there is a big dispersion in rural areas, it's very difficult to give services, all kinds of public services, that they have power, they have light, they have water, they have telecommunications, they have drainage, they have education, they can have health, they can have all kinds of services. And it's important that all these services should be profitable. And what should be done is that the possibility that the license or concessions of these services be gave by the government, and the money that will be used for the investments that are very big and necessary can be done always by private sector. And that's important because you can have in this way always the most modern services, because government can make regulations to look that the standard of service be so high that it works. You can work also with cross subsidies to make that people with very low income be subsidized, and the big consumption of the people with money pay for the subsidies of these people can be other way. And you can find or have the private investment everywhere in all these services. It can be by the construction of roads, can be for the service of water, or telecommunications, or power, or any other of health, any service. And what is interesting is that in many of these private investments, if the concession is for 20 years, as much as the time goes on, it gets back to the government the possibility to renew at other value, and always the asset will increase. And what is important is that having these years, and it looks like in the next years will follow the availability of money in very low price to long term. It is with these conditions of interest rates and availability of money, most of the projects, maybe all of these projects, are feasible to run, to make them. And that makes very important, because all this construction of infrastructure is not only give a good service to the population, but also is activity, economic activity and employment. And like you know, most of the employment going from all these areas of construction, housing is other example, and all these services.
And I want to talk a little about how technology has enabled all of those sectors that you mentioned, because you've been very savvy in terms of obviously telecom, but the prepaid phone cards with 100% participation. So we'll get back to that. But we want to make sure that this is actionable. So I'd love to identify the real challenges and where the work that needs to be done could come in. So Gavin, you've spoken a lot about the environmental impact. When you have so many people moving into cities, clearly that impacts air quality and demand for food and water. Tell us about the challenges.
Well, if I may, let me take a step back. Just let's go back 200 years. And you saw this perhaps in the predicate that brought you here, the foundational question. 3% of the world's population in 1800 lived in urban areas. In 1900, it was about 13%. And about 5 years ago, we reached, for the first time in human history, more people on the planet were living in urban centers and rural and suburban areas combined, 50+%. Interesting points of fact. In 1950, there were 83 cities around the world with populations north of 1 million. 1960, 111. And around 2007, 2008, we started to break 300. Now there's roughly 468 cities with a population north of 1 million. Now the advent of these megacities, 10+ million, 5 to 10+ million, and then mega regions, and cities bleeding into regions. So the challenge is self-evident. How can people live together, advance together, and prosper together across every conceivable and imaginable difference? How can you support this mass urbanization of 1 million, 1.5 million people moving into cities every single week? How can we reconcile the fact that now China alone has 120+ cities with 1 million+ people, in Africa, the mass urbanization, in Latin America, the mass urbanization? Therein lies the twin challenges. The challenge of resource allocation, sustainability, the issue of water, sanitation, health, transportation, education, and the like. But then the twin opportunity, which is hardly a challenge, but the opportunity to allow people to live their lives out loud and build the new economic paradigm that's being built around the world. And it's important to consider just in America, that economic paradigm is an urban paradigm. 90% of the GDP in the United States already emanates from cities. You look at the 40 biggest mega regions in the world, roughly 50, or rather, it's interesting, 66% of the economic activity comes from those cities. It's 50% just from cities 1 million or more. A lot of stats, long-winded point, is this is our fate and future. And we have to reconcile it from the human level, because it is a remarkable challenge to deal with ethnic, racial, religious diversity, to deal with the remarkable capacity of people, again, across these chasms of life, to be able to come together, celebrate all their interesting differences, but unite around the things that brought them together in the first place. And so that, to me, to your point, is the human capital equation, not just the infrastructure equation that needs to be reconciled as well.
That's a great point, Gavin. And Jeanette, you've made some tough choices. A lot of people were debating whether or not some of the choices that were made in New York were the right ones, because some people were uncomfortable with bikes. They wanted to be in their cars. But you made choices, and today most people are looking at a different city, a more livable city. Tell us about that. What have you done?
Well, thank you, Maria. I first of all want to welcome all of you to New York. You are part of our job stimulus program, so we're already having some success here. I think that the challenge that's been pointed out is how do we make urban areas work better? We're an increasingly urban world. And given that, we laid out a plan, Mayor Bloomberg's Plan YC initiative, which said, okay, we have 8.4 million people in New York today. We're going to have 1 million more people here by the year 2030. What are we going to do so that when we open the door in 2030, we like what we see? So his strategy was to look at what that meant, and that meant reducing the environmental impacts on the city of New York, and it meant improving the quality of life, which had some really profound implications for transportation. So we've worked very, very hard to prioritize people in our transportation network. And so building out more places for people to walk, which is really important for business. Building out more effective ways for people to get around by buses, which can be done at low cost and very quickly, rather than very expensive rail and commuter rail projects which can take decades and generations to build. You know, engineering new mobility onto our streets with bike lanes, which are great also for pedestrians, because injuries to all users go down every time we put down these lanes. And when we do things like close Broadway, how many of you have been to Broadway, seen the closures of Broadway? Thank you.
Shout out.
You know, not everybody thought that was a great idea at the time. I know that's a kind of a shock, but we closed Broadway and we made it better for people to walk around. And it turned out to be much better for business. We had, I think Times Square now, for the first time in history, is one of the top 10 retail locations on the planet. So, and it didn't cost a lot. We did it with a lot of paint and paintbrushes. So there are some low-cost things that cities around the world can do to improve how their people get around and improve the quality of life. And we really need to do that because cities are the future. New Yorkers have 1/3 of the carbon footprint of the average American. So really, if you want to save the planet, you should just move to New York.
Really, New York it's a different city. It looks like a different city. It feels much more livable today. Carlos, let's talk technology. How does technology enable change? Telecom, and you made the comment earlier that, you know, it's important to have, it's better to have more people in one concentrated place, because you could actually feed them, take care of them, offer the services that are required, and technology has enabled that.
I think big cities are very efficient, are low cost. I think the challenge should be, in the other case, that these people don't live in the cities. How can you have a dispersion of people around the country, having all the services of water, electricity, schools, health, markets, etc. The big cities make it very, very efficient because the costs get very low. And what you need is to have a good planning for having going vertical in some ways, transportation, avoiding with public transportation, and other kind of solutions. But in my view, if there were not these big cities, the service will be not affordable for the population. And we see that the people that are without services are the people that is dispersed in rural areas and that cannot be served with water supply, with health, and with education. And these big cities make very efficient because you have all the people in areas that you can design the architecture of the water network, of the electricity network, of the telecommunications network, the schools, the transportation is in small areas, especially if in these mega cities you can have a kind of many cities where the people don't need to move from this area because they have all the integrated, all the possibilities, including entertainment and health and schools, etc. I think that is very important, public transportation. And I think telecommunication is getting very important in all ways. First of all, well, technology, Technology is what has done the difference with the human beings. It's what have done the evolution from the recollectors and hunters today. The technology has done all the movements, all. And when there is some strong movement of technology, it's like a mutation, like the steam engine that make trains and boats and other kind of equipments and increase productivity all around, the electricity, and now with the telecommunications and the computers, we are moving at the speed of the light instead of the speed of the horse in the past, no? And now with that, it is very important. Until now, it was for voice, for communication between people. But as you manage data, as you manage video, it makes possible that you can have health, telehealth, health at distance. You need to change all the education. The education cannot be like it is traditional. You cannot make around, again, the same campus for universities and schools and have the professors. Now technology makes very efficient the possibility of education, very efficient health, very efficient the possibilities. Entertainment already, you don't need to go to the stadium. Maybe in the stadium go 50,000 or 100,000 people, but by TV there are 100 million people looking the sports. That will be the same in the other areas. For conference, for working, you can make it with telepresence. You don't need to travel as much, etc. I think what is now we're living is just the beginning of all the changes that are coming.
Maria, I would just say, and you've heard this from the panel, that what we're seeing is a very different way to think about megacities, not just as a challenge, but as a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity for infrastructure because it's dense, an opportunity for economic development because it's dense, an opportunity for the environment because it's dense. And this paradigm shift in thinking has to begin to get reflected in national, state, and local policy. Because right now, one of the barriers to taking advantage of each of these opportunities that we've heard about is the fact that city policies often fight against that density, fight against that legalization, fight against the unleashing of the human energy that comes when people are that close.
Anyone want to add to that? The bureaucracies that are created that perhaps ultimately become barriers to growth?
Well, it's certainly been a barrier in cities like New York, and I'm just speaking narrowly on the transportation picture. But a lot of the federal guidance has really been written for Kansas. And so to get the kinds of projects that we need to get built, whether they're bus rapid transit, whether they're bikes, whether they're pedestrian plazas, redesigning our streets so that they work for the millions of people that live in them, requires a different approach. And so what we've started to do is rewrite the book. Because I think cities are really the incubators of innovation, and that's where the drive is coming. And so I think they're really leading the charge. And I think we need to do more to adapt our federal and state policies, certainly, so that they better reflect and support the needs of cities where we've got 75% of the GDP and 80% of the population. And so we need a new approach.
And just to reinforce, and perversely, I think cities, from a governance perspective, bureaucratic perspective, are advantageous. The challenge is when you have different governing models in rural areas and suburban areas, it's very difficult to align those models. At least within a city, you have a framework of a city council or a board of supervisors, a city manager, a mayor, or whatever the variant of that is around the world. But you made an important point. Cities are laboratories of innovation. States are laboratories of democracy. That innovative spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in cities. Cause and effect, good decisions, bad. Decisions made in real time have a direct impact on real people's lives. And so there's an iterative process, a learning capacity within cities that's remarkable. And technology is that great enabler to then scale that iterative framework. And that's going to be the great differentiator. It's a question of how we evenly distribute those technological advancements, even within cities, let alone a global perspective. Cisco is betting the farm on connected cities, IBM on smart cities. Everyone understands the opportunity of taking this massive wealth of data and using it for predictive policing, as it was conceived of here in New York under the police chief of Bratton, or integrative traffic management systems that have spawned Singapore's and Stockholm and London's version of congestion pricing that clearly took center stage here in New York, or in San Francisco, where we took advantage of your successful failure on congestion pricing of getting some of those.
Thank you for that.
And we were proud to take the money, and we actually have experimented again using technology with not congestion driving management, but congestion parking management, where you have sensors and the base of each on-street parking meter, and you can determine the availability of parking by just downloading an app called SF Park and determine before you even leave the house where there's available on-street parking. I mean, this is the future of cities, technology enabling that. It's a question, again, of equal distribution of those tools of technology.
So what needs to be done? Minister Young, you were about to begin on the challenges that you've seen in terms of all of the people moving to the cities in China. Tell us about that, and we want to also get some actionable ideas in terms of where the needs are.
I think cities are very important for generating more GDP and to uplift the whole society, because 1% increase in urban population will mean a lot of jobs, a lot of consumption, and a lot of investment. On the other hand, the bulging cities will create lots of problems as well. For instance, population pressure, environmental degradation, and the lack of social amenities and the social security issues and so on. So what we are doing in China is, first, there has to be overarching, overall strategic planning. Around the big cities, the megacities, we need to build up more small and medium-sized cities. So instead of having just a megacity, you have a cluster of cities. But to do that, like what Carlos has just said, technology comes in handy. Because if you have good telecommunication, you have good lines of communication. For instance, in China, we have built about 90,000 kilometers of railways, 70,000 kilometers of highways, and 7,000 kilometers of bullet train tracks. And all this has actually encouraged people to move away from the megacities. So you have seen a mushrooming of small and medium cities around the megacities, and the dwellers there, they have the quietness of the countryside. On the other hand, they enjoy all the good facilities of the megacities. Second, it is very important to build environmentally friendly megacities. In China now, we spend a lot of capital on hybrid cars and electric cars. We want to make sure that people who buy cars whose engine displacement is under 1.6 liters we enjoy all kinds of tax incentives. And all this helps to make cities cleaner and more beautiful. Thirdly, it is very important to ensure social security for our people, particularly the aging population. So the coverage of old age insurance scheme in Chinese cities is now about 257 million people. And in the next 5 to 10 years' time, it will be increased to 357 million people. Instead of most of my friends here must have been to the big cities like Shanghai and Beijing. What I would like to stress is that among the 120 cities whose population is over 1 million, there is a host of new cultural facilities. Take a city of Yantai along the Chinese coast, for example. I was amazed to see how they arrange the cultural facilities, amenities there. First, they have a museum, and they have upgraded the museum, and museums are mostly about the past. And then they have a library for citizens. And then they have theaters. And then they have the children's library and children's palace, which represents the future. So the citizens there are very proud of what they have achieved, not only on the economic side, but on the culture side, on the social side. So this is the kind of road we want to chart for our future. Thank you.
You're ensuring that education is a big part of all of this. James, we hit on technology, and I know that the banking sector, particularly the low income, is very reliant on the mobile technology. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Thank you. It is true that the modern cities will be slightly different from the old cities, one, because of application of technology. And technology is revolutionizing, it's solving some of the social and political and economic issues that had been identified with the modern cities. When you look at Africa, one of the biggest challenges has been the sparse areas that populations have been living in. Now, with modern technology or mobile technology, then you'll notice that these are becoming delivery channels of financial services. So the concentration and aggregation of the old brick and mortar branches is significantly reduced. People are able to serve or to be served on a self-service menu on their phones on financial service. They can transact most of the things that used to take them to the banking halls. So that really enables. The second thing is the payment system and gateway. Again, it's being built around the same mobile technology. And payments, particularly at the retail level, now with near-field technology, you'll find that we are moving even ahead of the cards, such that we are leapfrogging on mobile phones to avoid the steps of the cards. So I would say banking is completely being changed by technology. And on that, again, you can add a lot of other facets, whether it's agricultural technology on the same platform, and then the payment is effected. So you have a transaction from to completion with the payment being made on a handset.
I think that's a great point.
And Maria, it's not just the financial service. I mean, everything's moving mobile, everything's being localized, and everything's becoming social. And so this creates tremendous opportunity in terms of empowering citizens. We've got 5 billion people by 2030 who are going to be living in urban centers. How do you give voice to 5 billion people? How do you empower people? How do you feel that they're part of their governance so that we're not dealing with the challenges we're dealing in the Arab Spring, or dealing with the challenges of people that don't, again, resource allocation, haven't seen the same kind of distribution of opportunity. I mean, 1/3 of the world's slums are in urban areas and growing. I mean, not as percentage terms, but in raw numbers. How do you give voice to folks? So technology becomes that enabler. I see Lorraine Jobs is here. I mean, it really is government as a platform. as an iPad or an iPhone. No longer vending machine government. Someone once coined government as a vending machine. You put a dollar bill in, and you get defense, you get welfare, you get health care and security, and if you don't like it, you shake the vending machine. Now you've got government truly, literally, and figuratively in the cloud, and the opportunity of ubiquity and connectivity, and again, localizing and mobilizing people in a different way and giving them voice. So technology is incredibly empowering in terms of ultimately connecting those dots within these cities.
If I may intercept there, particularly as the governments become e-governments and e-payment, then all these challenges that we have had with the financial sector will really be diminished. The cost of finance, because of the moving, the cash handling challenges, will be significantly reduced. Then the integration between the rural and the urban populations using technology, fiber optic, again, that really eases the challenge.
You know, it's not just in the public sector. You can visit these places. You can be in Mumbai in a terrible, enormous slum where they're taking orders from automakers in other countries for metal stamped parts. In Kibera, where a set of young men have created a recycling plant that literally grinds bottles and sells them through digital orders to local businesses. And they're getting these orders on their cell phone. And by the way, no one put up a cell tower in that neighborhood. They put it up in the neighborhood right next to it that's affluent. But you can't redline cell coverage. Lots of these places have better coverage than New York City. Enormous economic opportunity.
I just want to add something there slightly discordant. I think there is an enormous potential. We do a lot of our work now on Facebook and Twitter, and I think we're probably pretty far ahead in terms of getting the public involved in the planning process for all of our projects. But it is really important that we continue to do face-to-face and community meetings. There is no substitute, and not everybody has a smartphone, and not everybody is on an iPad. And, you know, I've learned that, you know, we have 8.4 million New Yorkers, and we have 8.4 million traffic engineers, because everybody feels really strongly about the projects that affect them and their streets, and they want to talk about it, and it can't always be done digitally. So I think we've gone a long way in using the technology, and we have portals, and we just launched a bike share system, and you know, within the first week we had 5,000 people have suggestions for where they want the stations to be. We're only having 600 stations, so you know, there's a lot of opportunity there. But I think that it's really important that we continue to grow digitally and with e-government, but I think it's really important that we continue to do the one-on-one meetings, meet with our local elected politicians, council members, speakers, et cetera.
It's about innovation, right? I mean, you know, America doesn't own innovation. I mean, right now you've got the Russians creating the Skolkovo project, trying to be the Silicon Valley of Russia. The Chinese are producing solar panels. So how do you get innovation moving enough to create jobs? I mean, Mayor Bloomberg right now is trying to get research facilities in New York to do biotech. I think James makes a great point about biotech. So where is the innovation in the world today, and will that create jobs?
I'm going to say California, right? I mean, some of the most profound and important companies in the world are out there in California. Why? Because we invested disproportionately in human capital over the last century. It was our researchers, institutions of higher learning, our research and development that created clusters of people, came together. And that's been our proud past. The challenge is that now that is at peril with budget cuts and other related issues. But at the end of the day, it's R&D, it's investment in human capital that drive that innovation. Simple.
And I think if you take a look at the investment strategies that a lot of major cities like New York and San Francisco have pursued, you see great dividends when you marry sustainability and livability. It is an economic development strategy because we are all in a competition for global talent. We are all in a competition for the same investment dollars. We are all in a competition for the jobs. 1 in 10 private sector jobs last year, I think, was created in New York City. So, you know, that kind of investment strategy is working, and it's paying big dividends on the employment side and I think on the quality of life side, because that's what it really comes down to. You know, we need to create a city and build on our density and our extensive public transit system and create a city that people want to live in, because talent today can move anywhere.
I think in terms of innovation and ability to create jobs, one needs to look, for instance, the mobile innovations that have happened in Kenya with Equity and M-Pesa. Now we have over 40,000 agents, maybe each of them employing 2 to 3 people. Just one single product employs more than 100,000 or has created more than 100,000 jobs. So innovation has a real role to play in creating the next wave of jobs.
And just a point of fact, 9 out of 10 of the world's innovations already emanate from cities. So, I mean, this is, it's to the topic, to the point. It's, again, when people come together across every conceivable difference and mash up, and those backgrounds and perspectives and an entrepreneurial spirit, a spirit not just of dreaming but doing, and application come together. And the focus, and it needs to, again, be on the soft focus, which is investing in that human capital, investing in that quality imagination, investing in that, not just STEM, but I would argue STEAM. You got to invest in science, technology, engineering, math, and that imagination, which is the A in STEAM, arts and design, which of course drives so much of America's economic output.
Minister.
Yeah, I believe that every challenge, every crisis will lead to a bumper harvest of innovation. And this is right before our eyes. Because of the shortage of energy, and China has invested a lot in solar energy and other renewable energies. This actually calls for a combination of efforts from companies, from research institutions, universities. And the government has to give a certain kind of guidance and give companies, universities, and institutions incentives. So now we have quite a handsome renewable energy business in China. But we want to reach out and have a good cooperation with the United States and other countries to make sure that the benefits will spread evenly around the world. And second, I believe it is very important for the megacities, the mayors, the administrators to meet each other from time to time to exchange their views. It is very important to make sure that you will not reinvent the wheel and you will not repeat others' errors, and you will benefit from this cutting-edge technology of our era. So China is trying to do all that. I believe that the cities, they represent the future. As you know, that we have held in Shanghai a World Expo entitled Better City, Better Life. And we need to do more in that regard. Thank you.
Carlos?
Well, I think innovation is everywhere. And the good thing is also that the innovation in some areas, some places, some products, some services, we can learn about that and use them. Innovation is in fashion, innovation is in design, innovation is in technology, development of content, of applications. We look that every day they make a lot of new applications. In industrial processes, there are innovations. They are innovation everywhere. And in the cities, we have also not only the architects can make innovations and using the technology and the new products that are consequence of technology, but also revitalization of cities, all the downtown, and renovation of urban renovation is also very important, can be an innovation in some ways. And well, we find it everywhere. People is getting more creativity, they are having more creativity as they are better educated and have more knowledge and culture. They are constantly thinking in things, how can they be better, or how can be nicer, or how can be cheaper, etc.
But here we are in a global economic slowdown. I mean, can you share with us some of the challenges that you've seen and you've faced as a result of the economic environment? I mean, surely wanting to get some of these programs, these innovations through is great thinking, but can it materialize given the fact that money is tight, around the world?
I would say that cities are cheaper. If we're caring about budgets, if we're caring about how much things cost, it is just cheaper. Carlos made the point earlier that it's much less expensive to deliver government services, to deliver rice in India, if the people are concentrated in one location. Urban policies, urban development, and urban density yields more efficient government.
I think that's right, and I also don't think it has to take a whole lot of money. I mean, I think that you can bring the kinds of innovation, the kind of changes that we need to see without having billions of dollars in capital funding. We've done that in New York City, where we literally, you probably have seen some of the work that we've done painting plazas or bike lanes or moving forward with the projects that we've got going on. And that's paint and paint cans, which I think, you know, has a lot of lessons for other cities that don't necessarily have the political capital to be able to invest and make those cities grow and thrive and build on the density that makes them more efficient and more economically productive.
Have you had failures to share with us to explain or identify what challenges are there in terms of implementing some of these things and getting job creation moving?
Well, change is not for the faint of heart, and not everybody likes all the changes that you implement. And I think that it's really important to set out a vision or a plan for what it is that you're going to do. I think that it creates an atmosphere where people understand why you are investing, why you are making the changes that you're trying to make. And I think that the more you talk to people and the more you engage, the better off you are in terms of getting things done quickly. And building this sort of public and private sector support for the types of projects that we need to get done.
And we won't have enough darn time left to go through all my mistakes as mayor in San Francisco, but I'll tell you, one of the passion areas for me is sustainability and the environment. And I look at that from the framework not just of reducing global consumption, which is nothing more than the sum total of all local consumption, but looking at it in the framework of job creation. We have the highest level of green building standards in the United States. Trust me, that's not an easy thing to do. We require, you thought gay marriage was controversial in 2005. Try requiring composting in your city. That's controversial, trust me. I barely survived that one when we did that, but it was a job creation program. We created literally hundreds of jobs just from requiring that simple initiative. Therein, by the way, lies a great, I think, opportunity here from the global climate perspective. And we sit here and lament cap and trade, those that do lament it, lament cap and trade falling short, those that lament we're not having a debate about a gas tax or a carbon tax or putting some price on carbon. The opportunity from that innovative spirit is in cities, because there's no way you can approach the issue of growth and accommodate that growth unless you're being more sustainable and more efficient with your resources. And it forces, even if you're not an environmentalist, an economic paradigm in order to accommodate that growth with smart density, land use policies that actually affect the climate in a very profound and significant way. So I'm one of those people that's actually a little bit more optimistic because of this urbanization of what's going on in terms of global climate change as well.
Where are the actionable moves that people can make to provide what's required to get jobs in these cities as more and more people move to them?
I think one of them is the private sector jumping into the opportunities. While we were looking at mega city, mega challenges, I think we should have added mega opportunities. This is what really the private sector can jump in. The second one is where there is adequate lobbying, such that the regulatory framework and bylaws of cities are in tune with the innovations, because sometimes they trail behind innovation. So lobbying would be a major contribution.
I think it's very important to listen attentively to the views of the city dwellers, what they need, what they want, and the city planners will have to take that into full account. And I believe that during this time of economic slowdown worldwide, it is very important to make the necessary investment in infrastructure and let people see the benefits of good infrastructure projects, which will generate lots of jobs and which will hand goodies to people. And it is also very important to have more models of eco-cities. In China, we have a project with the Singaporeans to create an eco-city near the megacity Tianjin. So there are a couple of things we can do together. Thank you.
Carlos, what about from your standpoint, in terms of actionable moves that are required and that can be done from private investors to create jobs in these cities?
Well, I think that education is very important because people with a good level of education, I am not talking of PhD or something, with good training, and we need to focus education looking in 5 or 10 years which will be the activities that will demand jobs, which are the new activities of this new civilization that will ask for jobs, like information technology and environment care, or health for all people, entertainment. There are many activities that will be very important that will ask for more people in the future. More education and health will be a big demanders. People should be trained in these matters, in these areas where there will be a creation of jobs in the middle and long term. And with a good education, he is a better offer to have this kind of jobs. And I think that the other thing that I should love, the development of small and middle business are very important because they are the ones that give the big employment. We need to take down business mortality and support this small and middle business creation. And it will be good that innovation that has been used in the last 10 years for financial tools and vehicles will be used not only in the financial economy, but in the real economy. Innovation for the real economy we need.
Maria, I would just add that one thing we haven't mentioned is credit and credit availability. We know from Silicon Valley it is the match between entrepreneurial energy and creativity and the availability of credit. And I think many, many private and public opportunities are available in microenterprise.
This is one of the most important things that people need to understand as they walk out. Go ahead, Carlos.
No, the problem of credit of small and middle companies are to, first, to evaluate if it's a good risk, and second, the way to operate the credit. With this innovation we are doing that through the telephone company. If they have paid okay during 12 months or 15 months, we gave them 35 months, and we collect through the billing telephone.
Do you think these ideas, whether it's telecom, whether it's bikes, whether it's environmental changes, credit, are these scalable throughout the world in different cities, do you think? I mean, are the sort of the blueprint of creating jobs in cities as more people move into the cities, is that the blueprint that will work across the world?
We know credit's scalable. All over the world, after decades of investment in creating microcredit enterprises, we have a well-established, systematic ecosystem of folks who provide microloans at great effect with low default rates, business after business, in the millions now.
The development. Oh, no. Excuse me.
I don't think we have a choice. We have to make it work. If cities are the future of the planet, and they are, making them succeed matters at all levels. And so it's going to be different in different countries, and you have to tailor projects to meet the needs of different cities and people and programs. But there is no question that the innovations that we're talking about today are scalable, and they can be implemented in mega cities, large cities, and small.
And I appreciate the conversation around public-private partnership, but we need to indulge in a much more specific and intentional conversation around public-public partnerships. Leveraging public resources, NGOs, nonprofits, leveraging city resources, the county, state, and federal resources. And just very briefly, a good example was today, President Clinton in June conceived of an idea of using pension funds with labor's participation to build out infrastructure. And in California, the two largest pension funds, CalSTRS and CalPERS, have committed an unprecedented amount of money working through this model, which we just announced today, some of the progress, in a way that I think demonstrates that you can take existing resources, these resources that are publicly entrusted through our pension funds, and start investing them in a new and dynamic way without waiting around for the banks and the hedge funds and repatriated dollars to save the day. And so this is a moment of again, that spurs more innovation because, to your question, we don't have the traditional resources. So I think in many ways it's an exciting and more exciting time than ever.
Such an important issue, great insights. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.